might find that, there are some women who are born with a greater sex drive and they may not even know they have it because they may not have slept around. So and the guys prayed, and there are people who get together who have differing levels of sexual, their arousal levels are different and their libidos are different. So just because you and your spouse have different libidos doesn't necessarily mean they didn't pray for the woman that they got. I mean, I think there are a lot of guys who do pray and get a woman, and suppose she doesn't have enough libido because she might not have been exposed, or she doesn't know, or whatever, or vice versa. There could be guys who marry, who have not been experienced in the world, and they get together and they don't know. There's nothing to compare it to because they weren't sexually active beforehand, and then maybe they did pray, but then the woman might be a little bit overpowering because she can do it more often.
You're right. You're definitely right. And my answer to that would be, then what is God literally trying to show you through your mate? Is he trying to show you that, yes, you are sexually active and your mate is not, but this is what I need to do to get through to you. I need you to pull back so you can meet your mate where he is, and your mate needs to step up and meet you a little bit where you are. So y'all need to come to a common ground. But in the meantime, if both of y'all are serving God and doing everything y'all can in the will of God, he will help work that situation out to where both parties are satisfied.
Okay, now I'm.
Come on, talk to me. Talk to me.
Wait now, see, wait.
Talk to me.
So wait a minute now. Let me I just want to make sure I'm hearing you clearly, because what you just said, if I was to take what you said on face value, and if all the listeners who are checking out this podcast and they have sexual mismatches going on, because I'm sure there are men and women, because I know that the ladies are checking this show out. I know they are, because they're sending us messages through social media saying, talk about this. So there are women who were not sexually, I can tell you, there are women who were not sexually active before they got married. They were not sexually active. They got with their husbands, enjoyed intercourse, and realized that they were much more amorous than their husbands were. Now, what you have just said is that God, if they are God-fearing people, is using their mate, maybe their out of shape mate, maybe their diabetic mate, maybe their hypertensive mate who doesn't have the same libido that they have, to teach them something, to pull back or to learn how to control their urges. Now, but the first thing that you said is God will send you somebody who's going to match you if you were praying to begin with. So which is it? Is God sending you somebody who matches you so that you all can experience the great euphoria of two bonded bodies that are in perfect harmony? Or is it the latter, which is, well, if you get stuck with somebody who wants it once a year and you happen to want it once an hour, that's just too bad. She's going to have to ramp it up a little, or he's going to have to ramp it up a little or down a little so that y'all can meet in the middle. I don't know that I'm completely convinced that this is a God thing. I don't know. I'm kind of not sure that this, I don't know. I could be wrong. Mustang, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I
wanted to answer it anyway. I like it. I wanted to answer it anyway. I'm glad. I was like, man, I don't want to interrupt. This is his answer. I thought I want to answer for Nola. And Nola, you stop me anytime because this is your answer. But this is what I feel like. When he said God's going to send you somebody, first of all, marriage is ordained by God. This is talking to these two people that do believe in God, that have come together under God. What God puts together, let no man separate. He gives you a match, but that match does not mean that you two are on eye level. My wife and I are a perfect match. We are perfect match, but we do not even think closely the same, not even close to the same thing. We are very yin and yang. However, we are able to meet, and I've got to grow to meet her where she's at. She's got to grow to meet me where I'm at, to become that one and to work together. Whereas the same, I believe, sexually, just because your mate wants to perform once a year does not mean it's okay for you to be angry because you want to do it once an hour. You two are still a match. That sex thing, oh, well, God put us together and you're not meeting my needs, so that's not okay. And I'm not saying anything about a previous marriage or anything like that, but I'm saying that that person needs to meet that person where they're at on all levels, not just, oh, this is how we deal with finances. This is how we deal with this is how we deal with our children. This is how we deal with sex too. And guess what? Our sex lives aren't parallel, but we still are matched together by God in the exact order that he wanted us to be in, if I've got that right.
So
100%.
Okay. So I'm willing to say that, I'm willing to acknowledge that what you're saying is that if you have gotten a partner and your partner and you are both praying and trying to live in a harmonious way, that differences of any nature, for example, differences in the way thinking, because you're two unique individuals, can be brought into harmony when God is in the center. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily have to just be sex. It can be sex or money or child rearing or whatever. There has to be some yin and yang compromise, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, and I think to your point, if you've got a wife who is under God and she only wants it once a year, then there is something wrong with her personal relationship with God if she will not want to accommodate you and try to meet you where you're at. But on the exact same token, if you know that this is a problem, whether a past experience or, hey, I just don't really care too much for it, it's also a problem on the man. If he says, well, I like to do it at every hour, but you know what? I'm going to try to meet her where she's at. Now, both people, now we may compromise on, once a week or once a month, as opposed to once a year, like one person wants, and once an hour, like the other person wants.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to,
okay.
Yeah.
Can I come in?
Yeah, go ahead, BA.
All right. Basically, let's step back a little bit too, because I heard Kurt talk about people with diabetes, or men that are out of shape, or everything like that. Let's really go back in time. And if you're a Bible believer and you looked at the Bible back and forth, forwards and backwards, it talks about the unhealthy, the people who could have back then had diabetes or had these issues. They lived in the castles. They lived in the big places like this. But most of the men and women that traveled were shepherds, were carpenters, were people that lived in towns, and they always walked. They worked. They didn't have those problems, Matter of fact, a lot of movies, and I'm not using a movie as a statement, but most of the people in there were healthy. I'm not saying they always ate the right food, but they didn't have all the processes and all the things that we've allowed ourselves to get into to make our bodies unhealthy. So, talking about the man and woman, I mean, if you lived in those days, I hate to say there was a point of marriage back then, but if you found a woman and found a man, you chose her, she definitely chose you. Y'all became a team because you had a future in mind. She had a future in mind too. She wanted to be a mother more likely than not. But you wanted to be a father. You wanted to push your lineage. Now let's bring it to this day and age. Whenever you choose a woman, you're thinking about, hopefully, as a man, future children, because every man needs a lineage, needs to have that, continuation, because your name is a representation of who you are. And, the last name is very strong for a man. Not saying it's not for a woman, because that's a very strong name too, but according in church or in Christian circles, usually the woman takes on the man's last name. Well, the woman, she has the understanding that she wants to be a mother. She wants to have kids. So really, just my opinion is that what you do is when you make that choice, the woman makes the choice, the man makes the choice on who they're going to marry. Now, they're not going to learn every little detail while the courtship or during the engagement, but that's the fun part of marriage, getting to know each other, getting to know each other continually, not giving up on each other. Maybe one does need to get a little bit more in shape, or one needs to learn how to be more of a servant. But, in the bedroom where this all started, needs to be for the man and woman to come together and make the choice of what they're going to do. Now, as believers, it should be in the righteous understanding of who God is first, and then, just however you please each other. And you can't go to extremes, like Mustang and Noah said.
Your main point is that first, you have to understand where everyone is and get on the same page. And then once you look at the bedroom, make sure that the bedroom isn't a place for destroying the value of the person you love, but to look at it in from God-centered eyes, and to look at your lineage, look at your activities, look at the loving aspects of why a woman has entered into marriage with you, and then ultimately try to meet those needs. So I get what you're saying, and I think those are very valuable points. I did, before we run out of time for this session, I wanted to switch gears just a second and talk a little bit more about the health issues. So we've talked about, you know, some of the constraints where there are issues where the man isn't able to perform, maybe lacks some stamina. There are changes to the male body that happen over time. And there are some challenges that happen as a result of health issues like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, vascular problems and changes. So how do we know when, or depression? I forgot to talk about the psychological ones. So how do we know when a spouse is suffering with a medical issue and this isn't a biblical issue? So I've heard you guys talk about, meeting your spouse where they are, et cetera, and so forth. But suppose now that the very fact that the spouse is not performing or is having difficulty performing, maybe that's an indicator that there is a problem. Could there be another reason that, women who are looking at their men saying, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you performing? Why are you not meeting the need? Something's going on.
Yes, NOLA 73. And I'm glad you brought that up because that was something that I wanted to also discuss and talk about. All of that plays a big part in coming from sex. Again, if y'all are, engaging in sexual activities, and like when my wife and I, if I'm rubbing her body, caressing her, I'm feeling everything about her whole body with my hands. And psychologically, I'm looking at her expressions. So if I feel a lump on her that never was there, I mention that to her. If I see her start to fall shortage of breath, I mention something to her. Those are the times when you come together that if you're really in tune with your spouse, that you should see the change, the significant change. It may be gradual, but it's a significant change, and you need to then discuss it and talk about it. Like, babe, last night, when you was on top, you started to get short-winded, or you was, looked like you wanted to pass out, or it just looked like you're not performing like you used to perform. Those are the telltale signs, but you can't get that if you're doing all other things. And that's not allowing you to really focus on your wife, really come together and focus on your husband. So, men, we tend to fall out of shape real fast. We, especially once we come out of high school, we're not exercising like we used to be. We're not running like we used to be. We're not playing sports no more like we used to be. And so the body takes on a change there. Thirdly, women, when they start having kids, their body take on a change. And so you have changes periodically throughout our life, and we never tend to go back to what we was like when we was in school, being active, being motivated, having a lot of stamina, ripping and running and playing things. My wife and I, we try to get back into tennis. I just realized I can't even be exposed to the sun without having to put sunscreen on. And I hate that. I mean, now when I go out there in the sun, I have to carry up with long sleeve shirts. So that's a change to my body. I didn't know that just all of a sudden happened. One year I'm in the sun, just relaxing, playing basketball. The next year I have to put sunscreen on. Why? Because my skin burns up. So every year things change. Every day we wake up, we change. Something may change in us. You may wake up and that person that was sexually active now, she done lost 10, 15 notches. She don't want to do it once a month. She may want to do it once every 5 months. That changed just overnight. And so every day we go to bed, every time we wake up, we change. If we start eating something different, bringing a new food into our body, something changes in us mechanically. There's a lot of pesticides on food. That's a lot of things right there that's hindering things that men go through, hindering things that women go through. It's bringing on a lot of different diseases. So there's a lot of things we have to be conscious of. We have to be aware of it. And the only thing we can do is be aware of it, but then exercise. None of us are not exercising, and we have to do it on a daily basis.
Well, I appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts, and that will wrap up this particular episode. We're going to continue our discussion next week on this very same topic. This has been Conversations from the Cave. I'm your host, Kirk Kennedy. Join us next week for another exciting episode as we dialogue more about kinky. Where do Christians lie?
Conversations from the Cave is brought to you by the Alabama Cornea Care Center, Northern Alabama's first irregular cornea, keratoconus, and scleral lens referral center, specializing in the management of degenerative cornea disease and complications resulting from refractive surgery. For more information, you may visit them on the web at alabamacorneacare.com. The Alabama Cornea Care Center, helping patients see the light of the world. Conversations from the Cave is a production of the Provox Media Group. For more information or to share your questions or comments, visit our podcast Facebook page by searching Conversations from the Cave. The views expressed on this program are the personal beliefs of the panelists and do not necessarily represent the